Welcome to the Introduction to Graded Assignment number 2, Scrabble Score. In this video, I'm going to talk about the core concepts that you need to know in order to complete this assignment. I'll give you a little bit of an overview and demonstrate what your code should be like at different points along the way with the different tasks. And then we'll take a close look at the starter code and talk about some common issues that students run into with this graded assignment. And then I'll just give you some last reminders and point you to some extra resources on my website where you can practice these concepts a little bit if you would like. So the chapters we're focusing on for this assignment are chapters 10 through 12. You need to know about function definitions, both named and anonymous functions. Function references, what happens if you just need to refer to a function, point to it, rather than calling it. What are objects? How to define those, how to define their properties and methods, and then how to loop over key value pairs. There's a special kind of loop that you learn that is different from any loops you might have learned in previous chapters. So that's the main focus. However, you also need to have the fundamentals from previous chapters. So you need to have things like string methods, arrays, array methods, conditionals, iterating with loops, formatting output with template literals, interacting with the user in the console, and of course, running autograder tests, which you have done for previous assignments. So that's most of it. If you have all of these things, have covered all these things in class and you feel like you have a good handle on them, you're going to be able to dig into this and start knocking it out. So let me talk a little bit about the assignment. The instructions are here. We can take a look here in the book. Of course, the graded assignment instructions are below the chapters in the JavaScript curriculum, so you'll see it right here. And they just give you, a little bit of the list of requirements. This is going to be a little program that you're going to write where a user can come in and give you a word, and then your program will score it for them. Initially, you're just going to score it with an existing algorithm, the old Scrabble score. But then you're going to add some more algorithms and eventually transform and create a new Scrabble score. And by the end, you should have a program where they can ask for it to be scored one of those three ways, and then you can return that score to them. So that's where you're headed. I'm going to break that down, and you'll see kind of how that's going to unfold. And you only have to do a little bit at a time, and especially at the beginning, it'll be a very small part with task 1. They do give you the starter code here, a link to the repo, and they remind you that you need to npm install when you get it on your computer, and use the command node index to run it. And if you see this line, let's play some Scrabble, then everything's running properly and everything's installed. So again, an overview of the requirements, the link to that repo, but don't forget that, you want to fork it first. You also want to enable GitHub Actions so that it can run the autograder when you push it, anytime you push code to GitHub, and then clone it to your local machine. And from there, use npm install. Okay, let's talk about task 1, the very first thing that you want to do. The idea here is to have an initial prompt. You're just going to ask the user for a word to be scored. And then once you have that word, you can score it for them using this existing function, old Scrabble score, and then print the result. That's it. So I'll give you a little bit of a demo on what this looks like. I'm going to switch branches here to task 1, and I will use node index to run the program. And it just says, let's play some Scrabble, enter a word to score, and I'll just put in JavaScript, right? Sure. And so it gives me every single letter with its individual score printed out just like that. This is not ultimately the way that you're going to do this, but it's the way that it works for now, and it's all you need to do for task 1. The other thing you need to know about task 1 is that auto-grading tests are all going to fail at this point. You can run npm test, I'll do it, and everything is going to fail, all 17, and that's normal. These tests are not looking for you to have done anything just yet, but there's this whole list of all of them, and we're going to see how other tasks that you complete will actually start causing these to pass. So don't worry about it for now. If you get to this point and you're getting this sort of an output, that's all you need to do. Let's look at the Let's look at this page in the instructions. Yeah, so essentially what they're doing is telling you, you've already been given an initial prompt function, which is why you saw that first line, let's play some Scrabble, but you just need to add to it to make sure you're asking the user for that word. And then that initial prompt function should return that word. And then you should make use of that to score it. When we get to looking at the starter code, I'll talk about that a little bit more. But that's it. Okay, so now let's do task 2. Let's look at that. So this is where you start to add a little bit more functionality. There's a couple of other ways that you can score the words. So you're going to write 2 more functions, simple score and vowel bonus score. And they should each have their own definition. So simple score, they tell you here, just takes a word and assigns 1 point for each letter in the word. So it's just going to return that score, that number. Vowel bonus score will take a word and then assign 3 points for every vowel and 1 point for every consonant, and then return that total score. So both of these, you'll just need to define them. And you also want to make sure that your algorithms are case insensitive. So it doesn't matter if someone types something in uppercase or lowercase, it should assign the points the same, no matter what. Okay. Then after you've done that, there's going to be this array, scoring algorithms, that currently is empty. You need to add 3 objects to it, and each of those objects needs to have 3 keys, name, description, and scorer function. I'm going to switch over here and show you this. You'll notice I had a little asterisk here, right? Currently, in the code, in the instructions, it says scoring function, but in the code, in the unit test for the autograder, it actually is checking for scorer function. So if that's still the case at the time that you watch this video, I would recommend just using scorer function so that the test will pass and you don't have to worry about it. But anyway, name, description, scorer function. And then these are the values for each of the types of algorithms that you're going to have for each of those keys, name, description, and score function. So you'll be able to use this information, set up those objects so that all 3 of them are in that array at indices 0, 1, and 2. That's going to enable you to make it really easy to let the user choose which one they want to use and then score the word. So set that up inside that array. And then the next thing is to finish the scorer prompt function. That's where, the job of that function is just to ask the user to select 0, 1, or 2, and you're going to kind of display that information for them so they know what it is they're trying to select, and then return the object. So that's instructions for that are right here. And they just say, if it's 0, then it should be the simple score. If it's 1, it should be the bonus. And if it's 2, it should be Scrabble. And this is very important. Scorer prompt should return the object the user has selected. This confuses a lot of people if they don't think about it too closely. You don't want to return a function. You don't want to return a score. All it needs to do, and you don't want to return this number. You actually want to use that number to go to the array and get which object in the array it's supposed to be. And that object should be what this returns. And then for your program, the place where you're actually putting your code to run the program, you'll be able to retrieve that object and use it to get a score. And then they even give you here some sample code you can put in to test that everything is set up properly. Like once you have your objects in there, you could test it and say, okay, what if the user gave me a 0? I could go to scoring algorithms at index 0 and access the name with .name. And I could also go to that same, index in the scoring algorithms array and call the scoring function or scorer function if you're going to use the one that matches what's in the grading autograder tests, and then pass in a word to be scored. And then if you were to log a little test like this, you would get something that looks like this. So take advantage of doing things like this to make sure your code's working the way that it's meant to. And once you have that working where you're getting that back from the user, which one to use, and you're able to test it, you'll actually call scorer prompt from the run program function so that you can make use then to score the word. That's where you want to actually do the scoring itself once you have the object that's intended to be used. And then it should look a little bit like this, and they've got a little bit of a printout here, but I will go ahead and demonstrate it for you. So let me get back to here. I'm going to go to a different branch here for task 2, and I'll node index to run the program, and I'll enter a word, and I'll stick with JavaScript for now. And it asks me, which scoring algorithm would you like to use, and displays, all 3 of these options. And I've got the name, I've got the description, and then I've got these corresponding numbers, and it's basically saying just choose one of these numbers, right? So I'll choose 1 for bonus vowels, and it gives me the score just like that. Boom. So that's what you're looking for. You could test it again. You're going to want to test it multiple times with, different words maybe. And I just realized I put something in there with a space. So it's going to score it as 11 and not 10, but that's okay. But yeah, test it out and make sure everything's working the way you expect it to, and then you should be good. The other thing, let me get to my bullet points here. Right, so you're going to run it, but then when you run the auto grading tests, you're going to expect that 8 of them will pass at this point. So I'll do that to demonstrate it for you. Okay, 9 failed, 8 passed. If we come up to the list, you can see that it's the tests that are checking to see you've got a simple scorer function and a vowel bonus scorer function, and that they do their job the way they're supposed to. And then there's one down here that says contains a scoring algorithms array of 3 scoring objects. And it confirms that that exists. This last one here, you might think, well, why is that one failing, right? Scoring algorithms contain 3 scoring objects, because that sounds an awful lot like the previous one. But what this is actually testing, if you were to go and look at the test file, it's expecting that the 3rd object is going to point to the final Scrabble scorer function, which you haven't written yet. You're not going to do that until task 4. So that's why this one fails right now. So don't worry about that. Just make sure these other 8 pass and you'll be good. Okay. Yeah, again, the instructions say scoring function, use scorer function to make those autograder tests pass. Okay. So let's look at tasks 3 and 4. Here's task 3. The thing you need to know about task 3 is it's actually not a task so much as it is an explanation of what you're about to do. So your task is to read it very carefully so that you understand where it is that you're about to head for task 4. So we can come over and look at this. I'm not going to read this in detail. You'll need to do that later. But I am going to point out that they're giving you a peek at the reason why you need to write a new Scrabble score function and have a new structure. Because if you look at this, everything is stored here. The keys are actually the point values for the letters. And then the values of these keys are arrays of letters. So it's a very inefficient way to have to find, what letter has what score, because you have to loop through all of the key value pairs and then loop through all of the arrays every time you want to find a letter and figure out what its point value is. So they're going to have you go through and change it to where you can just use the letters as a key and get their points as the value. And so it's going to look it's going to look pretty different. And then later, once you have that in place, you could do some of these little tests with console log statements to just make sure your new point structure has the right values for different letters. And they're giving you examples of how you could do that. But you won't be able to do this until after you do task 4. So you can kind of stick a pin in this, and let's look at that. For task 4, you want to write the transform function. That's the main goal of this, but you will tweak another couple things after that as well. So let's look at this. The transform function needs to take an object as a parameter, which is that old point structure object. And then when you call that function, it's going to return a new object that has lowercase letters as keys. So the original object is all uppercase, but your new one should have lowercase. Just don't forget that. And then the value for each one of those letters will be whatever point it's supposed to represent for Scrabble scoring. They give you a bunch of tips here on remembering how you can loop through key value pairs, how to assign new key value pairs for your new object, how you would access those arrays to get those letters out, how you would access a particular element within a letter array, based on the key, using the key in the old structure. They give you all the syntax here. The one thing I want you to be careful of, though, is they've put key here in quotes, because if you had a specific key, like in the example down here where you're using for, they've put it in quotes. But if you actually are working with a variable called key or something like that, then make sure you don't put the quotes. It would be more like it is with index here, where you just put it in as a variable. That's going to work the same way with the object location. Okay. So make sure you read through this, because this is going to help you kind of figure out how it is you need to transform this from one type of structure to another. And they warn you, don't hard code the new point structure, but you do want to print it out after you get your transform one to work. And you actually want to assign the resulting value of the structure that comes back from transform. You want to save it and store it in this new point structure variable that's already in the starter code for you. And I'll show you that in a minute. Once you've done that, your last task is to write the Scrabble scorer function that uses that new point structure to score a word. And just like the other two scoring functions, it should return the score of the word. This one will be quite a bit of work, but definitely take advantage of these tips here and all of that, and get to the point where you have this working the way that it's intended to. And you have to update scoring algorithms. Your object originally is going to be pointing to the old Scrabble scorer function, and you're going to have to make it point now to the Scrabble scorer function instead. And that's what's going to make that last test pass that we looked at. In fact, when you get done with this part, after writing transform function, storing that value in new point structure, and writing the new Scrabble score function, and updating the algorithms array in that particular object to point to the new one. Once you've done all of that and you've tested it, go run your NPM tests, and you should pass all 17 tests. So the first thing I'll do is switch over to my branch to demonstrate how this works. So I'll just run the program with node index, and I'll put a word in here to score. Okay. And it should work the same way it did before, but now you actually are using the new Scrabble scorer. So if I choose to, instead of printing out everything letter by letter like it was originally with the old Scrabble score, now it's coming back as a single number, just like the other two. And that's what you want. Test it, a bunch of different ways, make sure everything's working well, and then run an NPM test. And when you do, all 17 will pass, just like that. Okay, so that's the main assignment. That's really all you're required to do, but I'm going to talk about this in a second, about the new point structure. We're going to look at this in the starter code in a minute, that I'm going to recommend that you move this somewhere else in the code. But anyway, task 5 has bonus missions. So let me just talk about that for a minute, and then we're going to go and take a look at the code. So the first bonus mission is to validate user input so that you make sure that they enter either 0, 1, or 2. And it has to be a number, and it has to be one of those numbers specifically, so that it'll always select the correct algorithm and not cause an error. The second bonus mission is to update your new point structure object so that you actually have a way to handle blank tiles for the Scrabble score option, and just give it, a value of 0. The one thing you need to know about that is that if you do it inside the transform function, it's going to make one of the unit tests fail. So you actually want to add that key value pair after the fact, and just add it to the structure itself after it's been saved. So that's over here in task 5. You know, they talk a bit up here at the top about some test words you can use with different points for different scoring algorithms, and your sample output and auto grading, and how to submit. But these are the bonus missions down here. So if you choose to accept those, they'll be, you know, just good practice for things you're going to do in the future. And then I have a little bonus mission for you of my own, like a super bonus mission, to keep your program running so that the user can continue to score more words until they decide they're done. So let me demonstrate that for you, actually. I'm going to demonstrate both of them. Get back to the beginning here. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go to the bonus first and just demonstrate how these work. So the first bonus mission was to validate for the number, right? So I can put in a word. But what if here I was to put in like the letter A? It's going to ask me again now because I have validation in place. Please enter 0, 1, or 2. And let's say I slip and I hit 3. It asks me again, 0, 1, or 2. And now that I, you know, have that, it's always going to make sure that those are one of the 3 things that I enter. So I can say, okay, fine, I'll do it right. And then it scores it for me and I'm good. So that was the first bonus mission. The other one was to have the possibility of having blanks be scored as 0 for the Scrabble score. And so I'll run this again and I'll put in hello there. That was the one I was trying to do earlier. And I'll say I'm going to use the Scrabble score and hit 2. And so it gives me 16, which is correct. And it allowed it to do it without breaking it because it couldn't find a space. It was able to find it because I had added it to that object. All right. Now I'm going to switch over to the super bonus, and I'll show you what it looks like if you make your program reusable. If you make it loop. Okay, so I can say, you know, I'll enter a word, JavaScript, and, you know, score it. And then it says, would you like to score another word? And I can say, yes, yes, I would. And so I can put in hello there, and, you know, run it through Scrabble score, and then sure, would I like to score another word? Now, as soon as I say something other than no, or other than yes, including no, it just stops. It breaks out and says, thank you for playing. So that's the idea. It's just to make it keep running, which is really a nice thing to do for continuing to test it. You don't have to keep doing node index every time you want to test another word. All right. Now I want to talk about the starter code. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to switch back to main. So let me switch over here. And clear that. All right. And we'll just take a look at these files. So you have a package.json file when you start out. And as soon as you run npm install, you'll see that package lock.json and node modules appear. Don't modify anything in all of these files except for scrabblescore.js. That's where you put your code. You can run the index file to actually run the program with node index, as you've seen me do. And of course, the test file is in that test directory. That's the file that gets run every time you do npm test. So if you need to ever look in there to see, you know, gosh, I just cannot seem to pass this test, let me go see what it actually says, you can go and look in there. So you might be wondering, great, what about the code itself, right? This file right here is scrabblescore.js. This is where you put your code. And index is just using Scrabble score as a module and bringing that in and then running program from that. So run program is what gets executed. It's the only thing. And that actually is defined down here at the bottom, run program right there. And right now, all it's doing is calling initial prompt, which is just saying, let's play some Scrabble, enter a word. That's all it does at the beginning. So you're going to need to change that immediately in task 1. So first of all, you have the import for readline sync already provided at the top of the file. You can see that right here. And then you also have this old point structure object and the old Scrabble score functions. Those are in place. This is what you're going to be working with at the very beginning in task 1. And then you'll still be able to use it in task 2 as well. Once you create your scoring algorithms object, you're going to point to this one for Scrabble scoring initially. And it's not going to be until task 4 where you stop using this and use your new Scrabble score function instead. Everything that you want to write is actually here, from initial prompt down to run program. Just put all of your code here. That's it. So let's look at these different parts. You have several variables that are needed. One is the new point structure, and there's 3 anonymous scoring functions. So we'll look at that. These are the 3 that are for the functions. Each of your scoring solutions, these 2 are the ones that you're going to define in task 2, and this is the one you're going to define in task 4. And so you'll just set those anonymous function definitions into each of these variables and use those to call those functions, or to reference them, I should say. Scoring algorithms is where you put those 3 objects in task 2 that will have the names and descriptions of each of the algorithms, and then also point to these. And then down here is the new point structure. Now, I mentioned before that I was going to tell you probably are going to want to move that. That's because once you use the transform function to create a new structure and store it in here, it needs to be available to Scrabble score, which means this declaration needs to be higher in the code. It needs to be before line 43 here, so that Scrabble score actually can access it. It's out of scope when it's down here. So I would recommend you just move that up, and then you'll have no problem referencing it from inside here. Okay, so speaking of functions, there are 4 named functions where you're adding code, and you really just want to, follow the instructions carefully to know what to put where. But in summary, initial prompt has one job. You ask the user to give you a word, and then you return that word. Down here, it's running the function, but it's not receiving a return value, so you're going to want to do something about that. And then this function is the one you do in task 2, where you ask the user which of the algorithms they'd like to use. Again, this is going to need to return an object from this algorithm, and then you'll have to have a way to work with that down here. So the very last thing it tells you to do in task 2 is to call score prompt from run program here so that you can get that object and use it. Then transform is the one you're going to write in task 4 to take this old point structure and navigate through all of this, and then create a totally new structure that's going to have the letters as keys and in lowercase, and all of the numbers as the values of those keys. And then you'll set that as the value for new point structure, so that when you write Scrabble score, this will be what you're using now in order to score a word. And so this one, just like these 2, will return just the score. And then again, here, you're going to be making sure that this is where you're actually printing the score out for the user. And that goes for all of the tasks, task 1, 2, and 4. Just make sure this is where you're finally, telling them what the score was after you take care of the rest of it. Okay, and then of course, don't change anything about the exports down here. Okay, the code is very structured, just like graded assignment 1. That's a good thing. It helps you. Okay, general things to think about to help get past some of the issues that can crop up. Always read the instructions very thoroughly. I was skimming over some of it and just hitting the high points. You're going to want to go back and really read it. Familiarize yourself with the starter code. Take a look around at the other files. Make sure you understand how everything fits together, and especially how all of this fits together, since that's where you're going to be adding your code. Make frequent git commits. At minimum, make a commit every time you complete a task, but I would say make a commit every time you complete one of the items in a task, like writing a definition of a function, or creating those objects in the scoring algorithms array or something like that, because you want small changes. So make lots and lots of git commits. Use temporary console logs as often as you need to test values or debug your code as you go along. You can clean them out later. Do a reality check. with node index. I mean, don't forget to actually run your code and see if it's working the way you work, because it can be very easy to sit there and code and code and code and not actually be checking it. Always run the auto grader with npm test to make sure that it passes those before you reach out to your IAs for a demo. And then clean up your code before you submit. Not only should you remove any of those temporary console logs, you also want to remove any unnecessary comments that you may have left for yourself. Indentings, line spacing, semicolons. Think about all those things. Make it really nice and easy for you to read, and then also your IAs. So that's general. Let's talk about some specific things for each task. Initial prompt has one job, right? It needs to return a value. So think about where it would be best to receive that value and score the word, because they don't really explicitly say it in the instructions, but you don't want to score the word and give them the response in initial prompt. You want to do that elsewhere. Task 2, make sure you're storing those anonymous functions in the variables they provide for the first 2 algorithms. Make sure your scoring algorithms are case insensitive. And again, make sure that scoring algorithms array holds 3 objects and not just the functions. The objects are going to actually reference the functions. And then definitely use all of those examples in the tip box in task 2 to make sure that your code's working the way it's expected. Otherwise, it's not going to work out in the long run. For tasks 3 and 4, remember that you're not going to be able to do any of those suggested tests on task 3 until you've completed task 4. So you have to kind of go back and look at that later. And then, go through the tips in the tip box at the top of task 4 before you code transform, because it'll help you narrow down your thinking about how it is that you're going to go about coding this, because there's going to be a number of different things you have to do, but those tips are going to be super helpful. Again, don't use quotes anytime you're using a variable for the key. Only use quotes if you're hard coding it, like I want to look at, the value of 3, the key 3 or whatever. And then make sure you add code to run programs, since that's what gets executed from the index file, and that you're making use of the return values of your functions. Initial prompt returns a word, and score prompt returns an object, right? You need to make sure you're making use of those and doing everything in order. And definitely make sure your Scrabble score is also case insensitive, just like you did the first 2 in task 2. And then for the bonus missions, you already know how to do basic user input validation from chapter 9. So if you need a refresher, that's probably where you would go look for that. And again, just a reminder, don't add the space key value pair from this bonus mission. Don't do it in the transform function. It will cause one of your auto grading tests to fail. So just make sure that you add that key value pair later to the final new point structure. And some general reminders. You can only share your code with your IAs. You can't get help from classmates or other people that you know that are developers. And if you get stuck, there are a number of different things you can do. Try to debug it on your own, because you really are going to learn a lot this way. But you can also go recheck the instructions, reference chapters, lecture slides, do a Google search for, resources online. When you can't remember how to do something, like I can't remember how I go access a value in an object, then, go look it up, right? If you get stuck and you're banging your head against the wall or the desk or the keyboard, walk away for a little bit and then come back and try again. You can attend office hours with your IAs. If it's a graded assignment workday, they will just be there waiting to help you one-on-one. And they're happy to do that. It's a huge reason while they're there is to help you, point you in the right direction during these assignments when you're trying to put so many different concepts together. Stay in regular communication with them so that, they know, where you are in it, and, because at this point with graded assignment 2, it's not like graded assignment 1 where you had different parts and you were having them grade it, in 3 different parts. You're just going to be working on it, and there are a lot of different tasks, and they're not going to have any idea. Are you on task 2? Are you on task 4? So just let them know where you are. Keep them updated so that they can step in and help you as needed, and just know um, that you're making headway. All right, I have some stuff on my website that can help you prepare for this assignment if you have time. There's a physician directory and catering menu are the two little tutorials here. I did these when I was a TA years ago, and so there's videos of this. The code itself is on Replit, but it's a fun way to do a couple of programs that run with a lot of the same concepts as the Scrabble score assignment. And so you may find this helpful. And you may find it helpful anyway, even if you don't do it before your graded assignment is turned in. You may just want to go do this sometime just to learn a little bit more about how these little programs can be written to be interactive for a user in the console. All right, that's all I've got for you. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in the next one.